Welcome to the Bowtied Biotech podcast, where science meets business. If breakthrough biotech, bold innovations, and the business behind the science gets you excited, you're in the right place. Make sure to check us out on Substack, X, and LinkedIn at Bowtied Biotech for even more insights and updates. All right, we've got a lot to cover today, so let's dive right in.
All right, get ready to have your minds blown, because today we are diving deep into inheritance. But there's a twist.
Oh, there's definitely a twist.
We all learned about inheriting traits from our parents through DNA.
Right.
But is that really the whole story?
That's what we're here to find out. We're going to dig into some seriously cool research, stuff that's totally shaking up what we thought we knew about biology. Like, totally turning it on its head.
Hold on, shaking up biology? That sounds serious. What are we talking about here?
We're talking about challenging the central dogma of biology, something that's been around for ages.
Okay, the central dogma. You're going to have to break that down for me. I haven't looked at a biology textbook in a while.
Of course. So the central dogma, it's basically this. DNA, which holds all the genetic instructions, gets transcribed into RNA. Think of RNA as like a messenger molecule.
Okay, I'm with you. DNA to RNA.
Right, and then RNA gets translated into proteins. And proteins, those are the real workers of the cell. They do all sorts of important stuff.
So DNA to RNA to protein, the classic chain of command.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Scientists kept running into this puzzle.
What puzzle?
They call it missing heritability. Imagine you're trying to bake your grandma's famous cookies. You follow the recipe exactly, but
They just don't taste quite right.
right, like there's a secret ingredient missing, something beyond just the ingredients on the list.
Okay, and in this case, the missing ingredient isn't in our genes.
Bingo. They were finding traits that get passed down, but they just couldn't explain it by the DNA. Like, imagine inheriting your grandmother's curly hair, even though your DNA doesn't have those typical curly hair genes.
Oh, it's like, where'd that come from?
Right. These little mysteries led scientists to this whole other thing.
Yeah.
Amyloids. And how they play a role in inheritance.
Amyloids. Okay, that word sounds kind of familiar, but not in a good way. Don't they have a bad reputation when it comes to health?
You're not wrong. Amyloids are often linked to diseases like Alzheimer's, where they form these clumps in the brain.
Yeah, not good.
But, and this is where things get super interesting to say, they have this hidden talent. They can create these really, really stable structures. And those structures, they can actually carry information and influence traits across generations without changing the DNA.
Wait, what? Hold up. You're saying these protein structures, these amyloids, are like secret messengers going between generations, totally separate from our DNA?
You got it. Picture this. Your DNA, it's the main instruction manual, right? Passed down from parents to kids. But then you've got these amyloids acting like sticky notes all over that instruction manual. They don't change the actual DNA. They just add this whole other layer of info, kind of directing how those instructions get read and used.
Okay, so we're talking about these sticky notes from our parents, maybe even our grandparents, influencing how our genes actually work. It's like our ancestors are adding their own little comments and suggestions to our DNA. But do we actually see this happening, like in real life?
Oh, absolutely. Researchers have seen this in these tiny worms called C. elegans. They found that these worms were passing down certain developmental traits, like the shape of their bodies, through these amyloid proteins. And get this, completely separate from their actual DNA sequence. It's wild.
It's like these little worms are rewriting the rules of biology right in front of our eyes. And this is a big deal, right? It's not just some random science thing. This is changing how we think about life itself.
You got it. And it gets even more mind-blowing because this discovery with the worms got scientists thinking, what else influences inheritance besides DNA? And that's where this whole other mind-blowing idea comes in, alternative translation.
Alternative translation. Our cells are getting pretty creative with this inheritance thing. What is that?
Right. It's not just about the instructions in our genes. It's about how our cells interpret them too.
So it's not enough to just inherit the genes. It's about how your cells decide to actually use them.
That's wild. Can you give us an example? How does this alternative translation thing actually work? Imagine a musical score, right? The notes on the page are the same, but different conductors. They might emphasize different parts.
Leading to different interpretations of the same piece.
Exactly. Same notes, different performance. Just like that, our cells can take the same DNA sequence, but make slightly different proteins from it. It's like having a backup plan, a way to adapt and thrive, even when things change around them.
Okay, so we've got these amyloids acting like secret messengers, and this alternative translation thing adding even more layers to inheritance. It's like our cells have this whole conversation going on that we didn't even know about. But where are these amyloids coming from? Are they just floating around in our cells, choosing what to influence?
Great question. And that leads us to another fascinating piece of this puzzle, epigenetics.
Epigenetics. Okay, remind me about that one again.
Basically, it's how genes are expressed. Are they turned on or are they turned off? And here's the kicker. These changes happen without changing the DNA itself. Think of it like this. Your DNA is the hardware of your cells.
Right. Got it.
Then epigenetics, that's like the software. It's how that hardware is actually being used.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this connects. So where do amyloids fit into this epigenetics thing?
That's what's so cool. Scientists are starting to see a link between the two. It seems like amyloids might actually be influencing these epigenetic changes.
Wait a minute, you're saying these amyloids are like the masterminds behind the scenes, pulling the strings of both our genes A and D, our proteins. Okay, so this is blowing my mind a little bit. We're saying these tiny little amyloid things, they can actually be affected by things around us, our environment. And then those changes, they can get passed down like to our kids, even our grandkids.
That's exactly what we're learning. It's really remarkable. Let's say, for example, a pregnant woman goes through a time of famine, real hardship.
A really stressful situation.
Right. That stress, it can actually trigger changes in her amyloid structures. And those changes, they can then go on to influence how genes work in her child.
Wow, so like changing their metabolism, even their chances of getting certain diseases later on.
Exactly.
It's not just about inheriting your grandma's blue eyes anymore. It's like maybe you inherit her strength, her ability to overcome tough times because of how her experience has actually changed those amyloid structures. That's wild.
It really is. It changes everything about how we think about inheriting things from our families. It's like this whole other world of information being passed down, and it just makes you realize how much more complex we are than we ever knew.
We thought we had it all figured out with DNA, but now it's like, hold on, there's this whole other layer. It's like finding a hidden room in an old house, and inside are all these family secrets. But instead of old photos and diaries, we're finding like molecules and proteins that tell the story of who we are.
What a great analogy. It really is like uncovering hidden secrets, except these secrets hold the key to understanding life itself.
Exactly. So if we're talking about a whole new understanding of inheritance, what does this mean for things like medicine? This has to have huge implications, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. New treatments, new ways to prevent diseases, all based on this deeper understanding of how amyloids work. Maybe we can even find ways to target those amyloids directly.
Yeah.
Stop certain conditions before they even start.
Okay, and what about personalized medicine? Everyone's talking about that these days.
This could revolutionize that entire field. Imagine we already tailor some treatments based on your unique genes, but now imagine adding in your unique amyloid inheritance. It takes personalized medicine to a whole new level.
It's like having a crystal ball, but instead of seeing the future, it sees your health risks based on information passed down through generations. That's incredible.
It's powerful stuff. And it's not just about looking into the future. Think about what this could tell us about the past.
Oh, right, like using these ancient proteins to trace the history of life on Earth.
Imagine the stories those proteins could tell. It's like opening a whole new chapter in the story of life, all thanks to these incredible molecules.
So we've gone way beyond just looking at fossils. Now we're talking about amyloid inheritance, alternative translations. Like every time we think we've cracked the code of life, we discover another layer, another secret.
It's humbling, isn't it? And it shows us how much we still have to learn.
It definitely keeps things interesting. But if we're talking about all this new stuff, where does that leave DNA? Is it still the big boss, the blueprint of life? Or is it more like a first draft with a whole bunch of revisions and edits happening along the way?
It's a question a lot of scientists are wrestling with right now. DNA is still important, that's for sure. It's the starting point, the foundation. But maybe instead of a rigid blueprint, it's more like a framework.
Okay, I like that. Like instead of a textbook, it's more like a choose-your-own-adventure novel.
Exactly. DNA gives you the basic story, but your environment, your experiences, even things that happened to your ancestors, they all come together to write your own unique ending. It's fascinating.
Wow. So much for simple inheritance, right? Our family trees are a lot more tangled and connected than we ever knew. So what's the big takeaway for our listeners? If they're just hearing about this for the first time, what's the one thing you want them to remember?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that we're witnessing a revolution in biology. Just like discovering DNA was a game changer, this new research is changing everything we thought we knew about how traits are passed down. It's paradigm-shifting stuff.
It's like discovering a whole new language, right? But instead of words, it's these molecules and proteins carrying secrets across generations.
And who knows what other secrets are out there waiting to be discovered.
It really makes you wonder what other secrets our cells are keeping. Like, what else don't we know about?
Right. That's what makes all of this so exciting. We're looking at this whole hidden world right there inside us and finding these ways that things get passed down that we never even imagined.
It's like, okay, you find this hidden room in an old house, and it's full of family secrets, but instead of old letters and photos, it's molecules and proteins that hold the answers to, like, the mysteries of life itself.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's like we're uncovering a whole secret history, and the more we find out, the more we realize how much we still don't know.
There's always more to learn, that's for sure. So as we wrap things up here, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners will get from all of this, from this whole journey into inheritance, but, beyond just DNA?
I think the most important thing is to really appreciate the mystery of scientific discovery. I mean, we thought we had inheritance all figured out. We had it in the textbooks. But this new research, it just goes to show you nature is full of surprises, and what we think we know, it's always changing.
It's a good reminder. Stay curious, right? Keep asking those questions because you never know what amazing discovery might be right around the corner, ready to turn everything upside down.
Exactly.
And hey, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to make that next big discovery. That would be amazing.
That would be incredible.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the wild world of inheritance beyond DNA. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating look at the universe and, well, everything in it. See you then.
You have been listening to the Bowtied Biotech podcast. Make sure to check us out on Substack, X, and LinkedIn at Bowtied Biotech for even more insights and updates. We appreciate your support and see you next week.